Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on KXAN Live. I'm your anchor, Esmeralda Zamora, and today we are going to talk all things Nick's first warning weather with the birthday boy himself.
Oh,
Nick,
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Thanks for joining us. Happy birthday. How are you doing today?
You know, this is where I would be choosing to celebrate if I had the choice. Here talking about hurricanes with you on a beautiful sunny day. Why not on a Tuesday?
Why not? That's a perfect birthday in my book.
Thank you. Yes. I will present you with not a whole lot of presents, but plenty of weather knowledge. What we're going to talk about is CSU, Colorado State University, put out their Atlantic hurricane season forecast last week. This is sort of their first take on what to expect as far as the hurricane season goes. They'll do another update in about another month and a half, and then another update as we get into the hurricane season itself. So this is the first of many updates. And they do warn that their April update has the lowest skill, which means, as far as the accuracy of it, of course it's going to be lower. It's the furthest one away from hurricane season. But it does give us somewhat of an idea of what they're expecting.
And what they are saying is that we're going to have a bit of a more active season than last year.
Yeah, and remember what last year had too, because last year was busy as well. We had 18 tropical storms, and an average season, we have 14. 11 of those became hurricanes, and of those 11 hurricanes, we had 5 major hurricanes, which is a Category 3 strength or higher. So I put the averages on there for the number of hurricanes, 7, we got 11. Number of tropical storms is 14, we got 18. Number of major hurricanes is usually 3, but we got 5. So in every single category last year was a busier than normal hurricane season. Now there were some concerns leading into last hurricane season that it would be even busier than this, and it was still busier than normal by several named storms. But there was some worry that it would have been even worse. There have been years where we've gone through the entire alphabet of names and had to move on to the Greek alphabet. So last year was not one of those years, but it was certainly busy and it was certainly deadly. We had several major hurricanes and several storms that made landfall in the U.S. that caused some significant problems.
Yeah, last year I was reporting in the hurricane that happened near the Gulf Coast. I don't really remember the name of that one.
Yeah, there were several, but some of those actually got retired because of the damage that they did. These were the names that were retired. Beryl, which was replaced by Brianna. Helene, which was replaced by Holly. And Milton, which was replaced by Miguel. These are not going to be the names used this year. The names list gets recycled every 6 years. So in 5 years, we'll be getting names like Brianna, Holly, and Miguel on the Atlantic side. And then on the Pacific side, John was retired and replaced by Jake. So that just goes to show you, usually if the names are retired, it's because they've caused either significant fatalities or significant damage to the point that reusing those names would be traumatic for the people that have to live through those storms. They don't do this for every storm, even every storm that makes landfall, but they do it for the more major storms that will go down significantly in the history books. And certainly Beryl, Helene, and Milton did that.
And what year will Brianna, Holly, Miguel, and Jake be recycled in?
Yeah, so they replace them they rerun the lists every 6 years. So if they were in 2024, the list will show up again in 2030. All the other names from last year will be in that list with the exception of the ones that were retired. And that's how it works, is they've got 6 lists for the Atlantic with names for each 6 that cover most of the alphabet, but not all. And then when you retire the names, then you take them out. If they don't get retired, then they show up again in 6 years. I think the general idea is that 6 years is enough time for us to not be confused about a storm being too recent, because by the time we get into 2030, we'll have forgotten a lot of the names that were used in 2024. So these are the new names that will show up, but not until 2030 in that list.
Do you know what year we had to recycle or get rid of more names than normal?
No, but I can tell you that the I letter names have been retired more than any other letter. That's because we typically get to those I name storms around the middle of hurricane season when the Atlantic is almost at its most powerful, when the waters are warmer, when it's fairly active around early to mid-September is the peak of the hurricane season, and that's around the time that we get to those I names. So it was the I names retired more than any other letter on the alphabet. But as far as which particular year had the most retired names, not entirely sure. Certainly last year, 3 retired names is a decent amount. I want to say that usually it's 1 or 2 that get retired in the Atlantic each year. So 3 is a big number.
Wow. Well, you showed a little bit of how the hurricane season looked last year. With this update, what are we expecting for this year?
Yeah, so Colorado State University put out their initial Atlantic hurricane season forecast. And once again, I put the average number of storms in each category on the right. And you can see what we're expecting on the left. And this is their, again, April initial early forecast. So named storms, tropical storms or stronger, 17. Hurricanes, 9, that's 2 above average, and major hurricanes 4, which is 1 above average. So another busy season. Now, if we were to take these numbers verbatim, it would mean that it's not quite as busy of a season as last year, but they're not expecting an average season. They're not expecting a below average season. So once again, everyone from the Gulf through the Florida Peninsula up through the East Coast, we've got to be ready again for the potential for another active Atlantic hurricane season. But one thing we always say, Esme, is even in a quiet season, as far as the number of storms go, all it takes is one storm to hit a populated area with high winds, large storm surge, and you've got significant damage. So you could have a quiet season overall, but one storm can make all the difference, and it can be the one that inflicts, damage, devastation, and fatality. So the numbers matter, sure. It's not like they don't, but even in a quiet forecast, all it takes is one storm.
And what goes into predicting what this year's is going to look like?
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons that that Colorado State University are leaning toward a busier than normal hurricane season. And in large part, it's to do with 2 things. The ocean temperatures being warmer than normal in the areas that we typically see tropical development. And then the other is the lack of El Nino. We're not expecting to be in an El Nino at all this summer into early fall. Let's first talk about the warmer waters. You can see there's plenty of that from the Gulf into the Caribbean into the majority of the Atlantic. Warmer waters is a key ingredient to the development of tropical systems. As long as you don't have wind shear, which are the winds that can sort of rip apart a storm, then warm waters can help develop very healthy, strong, potentially significant and major tropical systems, hurricanes. So warm waters, we already have that. Now, remember it's April, so things can change as far as the water temperatures go into the summer and fall, which is why the lower skill in an April forecast compared to a May or a June forecast. Because if we get some upwelling of cooler water, then that can change the setup. But usually, if you've got warmer waters in April into May, that translates into those water temperatures generally staying warmer than normal, at least into a portion of summer, and certainly, therefore, a portion of the Atlantic hurricane season. And then on the other side, we're also looking at the odds of El Nino. Now, I mentioned the lack of El Nino being a key ingredient to why Colorado State University are expecting a quieter than normal season. And they are expecting, you can see the odds there, the red boxes as the odds of El Nino. And as we look ahead to the months here, the bottom of the screen, AMJ, April, May, June, and hurricane season begins in June. So that's why I've included it in the box. May, June, July, see that red box? Odds of El Nino, very low. June, July, August, so first 3 months of Atlantic hurricane season. Red box is the lowest, with the atmosphere favoring a ENSO neutral pattern. with lower odds there for a La Nina. So the lowest odds are for El Nino, June, July, August, September, that's JAS, August, September, October. Still, the odds are lowest for El Nino, and then September, October, November. While the odds are slowly trending up, they are certainly nowhere near the odds of a La Nina, summer into fall, or an ENSO neutral, summer into fall. And the reason that we would be looking at the importance of El Nino is that with the lack of El Nino being present, El Nino usually is responsible for fewer hurricanes in the Caribbean and into the Atlantic because of stronger vertical wind shear, which again can rip apart hurricanes. So the fact that we're pretty confident that, and Colorado State University are pretty confident that we're not going to be in El Nino in the summer and we're not going to be in El Nino in the fall. And El Nino usually means a quieter storm season for the Atlantic. That means that that is one of the two main factors as to why it should be a busier season. If we were looking at an El Nino, then it could be a quieter season because of the extra wind shear. We're just not looking at an El Nino this time. So the fact that we can't say that El Nino is coming to help tear our storms up, which therefore contributes to the fact that they're expecting a busier than normal season here, combined with the warmer waters. Now, interestingly, what happened last year is we had El Nino in the winter into the summer before we flipped over to La Nina this past winter. But because the water was so warm in the Atlantic, it almost overcome the negative effects of an El Nino, which is the wind shear. There was a period there where we had a quiet part of the season where El Nino was showing itself with the wind shear, and we didn't get a lot of storms for several weeks. But the warmer waters last year overcame the El Nino, and now this year we've got warmer waters and the lack of El Nino. So a couple of factors there leaning very heavily on it being a busier than normal season.
And when you say busier than normal, CSU also expects Texas to be at greater risk. Why is that?
Yeah, so they have their parameters for what are the typical odds of getting a landfalling hurricane to reach certain parts of either the Gulf or the Atlantic Ocean. So there are specific odds for that. Since 1880 through the year 2000, on average, 20% of years have had a landfalling hurricane in the Gulf, okay? So remember that 27% number. This year, with an expected busier season, the odds of a landfalling hurricane have gone up. Broadly, they've gone up just about everywhere, but they have gone up here for areas along the Gulf, all the way up until the Florida Panhandle. Those odds now this summer and fall, or this hurricane season, are at 33%. So that's a 6% higher likelihood, or comparing it to that 27%, which is average, they're expecting a higher than average chance of a hurricane making landfall from Brownsville all the way to, say, Pensacola.
Wow, all the way up to Florida.
Yeah, and then the odds of a landfalling hurricane along the East Coast have gone up as well, from 43%, which is average, all the way up to 51%. So you're more likely than not to have a landfalling hurricane along the eastern seaboard this year. So because the odds of hurricanes have gone up, the odds of a landfalling hurricane have gone up, sort of in tandem.
So we have to watch out.
Yeah, we got to watch out.
Now let's talk about the future. What are the names that we're gonna see this year during hurricane season?
So these names determined with the World Meteorological Organization. This is a list of names that gets repeated every 6 years unless a name gets retired. You may remember some of these from 6 years ago. And I'm hoping I'm not going to butcher any of these names because some of the pronunciations are a little on the trickier side. So I'm going to read them, and I'm also going to try and pull up the 2025 Hurricane Pronunciation Guide because some of them are a little less obvious than you might think. But here we go, shall we? So we've got, starting at the top, Andrea. So you might have thought it was Andrea, but no.
Andrea.
Andrea. Second, what do you think?
Barry.
Barry, very good. What do you think's next there?
Chantel.
It's more like Chantal.
Chantal.
Yeah. And then we've got Dexter after that. That one's fairly simple. Aaron after that. And then this one you would think it would be Fernand, but it's actually Fernand.
Fernand.
Yeah.
Fernand.
Then we've got Gabrielle, Umberto. Yeah. What about the next one, do you think?
Imelda.
Very good. Jerry, classic.
Karen.
Karen.
Classic.
Karen making a return. Oh, the jokes that would come. Then we've got Lorenzo, Melissa. Fairly easy to say there. Nestor. Olga. Yep. Pablo. Rebecca. Sebastian. Yeah, it's 4 syllables with this one. Not like Sebastian. Sebastian. So, yeah, you said it right. And then Tanya.
Van.
Next year it'll be car. No, Van. And then Wendy. So, a lot of those fairly self-explanatory there. And then, any names that you're looking forward to seeing out of those bunch?
I remember Imelda. I remember Hurricane Imelda a couple years ago.
Yeah, that would have been 5 years ago.
5.
Or going on 6 years ago now. So, yeah, some of these have showed up, and you may remember them just because they were repeated a lot. I remember Umberto, because I remember being like, oh, gosh, got to pronounce it that way. So these are making a return. They shouldn't be too unfamiliar for people.
Well,
and
hopefully we don't reach Wendy.
I know. Gosh, yes. The I name, as I mentioned, the I names have been the most retired, and Imelda there. Maybe we'll have to keep an eye on Imelda. The Eastern Pacific also gets its own collection of names. Now, I do want to draw your attention back. Remember I said the lack of El Nino? So El Nino Atlantic hurricane seasons mean fewer hurricanes. And in the Pacific, more hurricanes during El Nino. But the fact that it's not going to be an El Nino should mean less hurricanes for the Pacific. I didn't see the CSG forecast for the Pacific. I think they focus largely on the Atlantic. So if we're expecting a busier, usually if the Atlantic is busier, the Pacific is not busier because of the way that those patterns work. So anyway, looking into some of these names here, we've got, what do you think that first one is?
Alvin and the Chipmunks.
No, just Alvin, actually. Yeah. Yeah. They'll leave the and the Chipmunks for if they retire that name. Barbara. Cosme. What do you think the D one is?
Delilah.
It's
Delilah.
Delilah, yes, correct. Eric.
Flossie.
Gil, very good.
Henriette.
Good. Yeah, so no, it's not like Henrietta. Good. Henriette.
Evo,
correct.
Juliet.
Good.
Kiko.
Very nice.
Lorena,
perfect.
Mario.
It's me. Yes, Mario. Then we have Narda.
Octave,
Yes. Priscilla. Raymond. Sonia.
Tico. That's my brother's name, but
Really?
Tito, not Tico.
Oh, okay, close enough. Velma. Wallace.
Zena.
Yeah, Zena. York. And Zelda. Yeah, so we got Mario, Zelda.
Who comes up with these?
It's the World Meteorological Organization. Yeah. From what I understand, they're based in Europe. And they're the ones who do the retiring of the names too. So they retire the names, they fill in the new names, and then that's how we get the names that we get. Esme, a few, and I'll pop up the Atlantic hurricane names while we chat. A few years ago, it used to be that when we got through all of the names in the list here, that they would move on to the Greek alphabet. And then, but the problem became that if you go from a regular list of names to the Greek alphabet, then can you retire the Greek alphabet? Because then the next year, if you then go through the regular list of names and back to the Greek alphabet, then you're missing, you can't.
The reason why you're retiring the name.
Exactly. Either you don't retire the names of the Greek alphabet, and then people will be, perhaps dealing with the trauma of remembering those Greek alphabet names, or you do retire the Greek alphabet name, but there's no other name to swap it out by.
Yeah.
So now what they have is actually backup lists to this list.
Backup names?
Backup names list.
Oh, wow.
I don't have that ready. But it means once we get through Wendy, there's another list of names, A through W, ready to go. That means we don't ever use the Greek alphabet again. So we just did it, I think it was once or twice. And then they were like, okay, no more. We can't do that. So now they've got this backup list of names instead. So
they're prepared for this
They're prepared.
busy 2025 hurricane season.
Yeah. And it may not be as busy as last year. There's not a lot of, there's some indications that it'll be busier than normal, as we've already mentioned. But there was more talk about last year's season being way busier than normal.
Yeah.
So less of that talk this year. But as we mentioned, all it takes is one storm. So we want you to be ready. Here in Central Texas, our biggest concern from the systems that develop in the Atlantic or in the Gulf are for inland flooding. Now, they can often be beneficial to our lakes because that's where we've had a lot of our summer replenishments of the lake levels, but they have often come with some big floods in our history. So, good and bad there. But we do have to be concerned about flooding, and therefore we have to be concerned about the Atlantic hurricane season here in Central Texas. And we also watch the Pacific hurricane season too, because sometimes moisture from those Pacific storms, especially later in the season, getting into October, can actually get pulled from the Pacific over Mexico and into Central Texas and causes flooding here as well. So you may think, I live in Austin, or, I live in the hill country. Why do I have to worry about the Gulf or the Atlantic hurricane season? Well, we do get those impacts, even if it's not the strong winds and the storm surge. We get the heavy rain here that can be both good and bad for our way of life.
And we have that article that blog post that you wrote up on our homepage. It's titled CSU Forecasts Above Average Atlantic Hurricane Season. And I'm pretty sure all the graphics you showed today are in here too, right?
Yeah, it should all be in there. I think what I've also mentioned at the very bottom of the first section of the CSU part, I say when they're going to issue their next update. Is it the last line just below here? Or maybe a little above?
I'm confused.
I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, because this is by far...
This is the CSU.
Yep, so scroll down just a little bit more. And a little more.
Expected to be either neutral, Texas, is that
And then at the bottom there, here we go.
A little
going. Oh, here we go.
Issue an updated
June 11th.
hurricane June 11th.
Okay, yeah. So I knew it was sometime in the next month and a half or so. So June 11th will be the next time that Colorado State University updates their Atlantic hurricane season forecast. I will say that in May, we usually get the outlook from NOAA and the National Hurricane Center and the Climate Prediction Center. So sort of almost the more official government National Weather Service outlook for the hurricane season. So that one we will be passing along to you too. And then as we get into June, the updated CSU outlook will come out and we'll pass that along as well. Because I know there's still a lot of interest here locally, and everyone seems to know people who are by the Gulf, either here in Texas, in Florida, or up and down the eastern seaboard, closer to the Atlantic and not the Gulf. So we all know people who may be affected by these tropical systems, even if our impacts are less direct, but still that heavy rain and flooding.
Yes. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Nick. If anyone is interested in catching you on air, what time and where can they see you?
Yeah, I'll be on at 4 o'clock today talking about the warmth, the sunshine, the eventual return of 90s, and some humidity, and when we may be able to squeeze out a little more rain again. So I'll see you here in just about 29 minutes from now. There's a watch there.
29 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Nick. That's all we have today on Nick's First Warning Weather segment. We'll be back next week. And again, happy birthday.
Thanks.